Hey YouTubers, Dre Crawford here, Recovery One Drones. Oftentimes I get asked the question, well, how do you become qualified, or how do you do, or how do you get to do what you do? My history is pretty extensive. From the professional side of things, I come from a background of law enforcement into construction, which led to me becoming an inspector, and my current position is safety and training officer for the city of San Bernardino. What I'm going to go over today is just to give you a little tidbit highlights of how you can use your prior background to help you get started in the drone business. Nowadays, people are pretty much accepting trying to get their 107s. There's not as much pushback as it was before, and I think coming out with the trust test helped that people know that this is simply about making the hobby or the profession more professional. Like I tell people, even though we have hobbyists in manned aircraft, but they're still held to a professional licensing part of operating that aircraft. And I've been a big advocate of proponent of supporting that institution. I know others are resistant to it and just think, I just want to have fun and everything else. And nothing against you having fun and flying as your own enjoyment, just like somebody who wants to fly a manned aircraft for their own enjoyment, or just, like I say, just ferry their family to go to different places, vacations. But there is a nice element knowing that that individual is qualified to conduct himself in those activities. And I feel the same way it should be for drone operators. It may not be a popular position to have, but it makes me more confident when I'm out there and I encounter other drone flyers, even if it be RC or whatever the case may be, that they have a full understanding of the rules and regulations. I'm not to say that everybody's going to obey all the rules and regulations, just like we drive cars. We all understand the rules and regulations, but it's still up to the individual to abide by them. So by no means meaning that if you have a Part 107 or you're taking a trust test, that it means that you are totally going to be in compliance at all times. So, I don't want to have anybody think that, well, he must be naive thinking that just because you take those tests that all those people fly within the regs. The regs under Part 107 and in trust or flying drones in general still have a lot of gray areas. And some things are still up to interpretation, even by the FAA. Depending upon which FAA agent you may encounter or talk to on the phone or emails or whatever, may have different interpretations of what the law or what the regulations mean. A lot of times the regulations are there as guidelines. There are a few hard and fast rules. And I always tell people from my law enforcement background, the word shall and the word and the phrase will be are pretty much what they call hard and stone phrases. The coulds and possibles are gray areas, but when somebody states the phrase shall be punishable, shall be adhered to, will be punishable, those are the hard and fast statements when you talk about legal terminology. So some things are, like I say, legally binding to you. Other things may be more of a suggestion, or recommendation is the key word that is used a lot of times in the FAA guidelines when it comes to drones, as it being recommended, recommendations. So I'm going to show you some of the documentations on my background and how it got my foot in the door to doing commercial work. First of all, I'm going to show you my Department of Transportation reasonable suspicion certification. That allows me to observe peculiar behavior, or what I deem as possible under influence behavior. My background other than the current certification. Also, I'm a DRE, which I was trained by a law enforcement officer, which is a drug recognition expert. So it's basically the same thing. I can look at your eyeballs and behavior, not just smell your breath, and tell if you're under the influence. That's part of my background. Now, what I have to do with drones? Nothing. The next form I'll show you is my FEMA certification. Now, I took that for two reasons. One, I wanted to have that with me for a professional level, because I do work in with a municipality, and we are subject to have either man-made or natural disaster scenarios. System. So I need to be advised on that. Well, how does that come to help me out with drones? Well, guess what? When the hurricane comes through, when the flood comes through, and the FEMA comes into town and takes over as the head honcho of the incident command system, there's a great need for drones to be used. So if I can show them that I am, immersed, or say in knowledge of the FEMA system, they may be more inclined to want to have me work with them with my drones. OSHA 30. Some of you guys who come from construction background, safety background, are familiar with OSHA guidelines. Almost every line of work out there has mostly OSHA guidelines and safety parameters that your business or your vocation is governed by. Usually the OSHA 10 is basically the frontline worker level. The OSHA 30 usually goes for the supervisor level, which is what I have as an OSHA 30 certificate. It's just something to have in your back pocket, so that you are working around construction, you can definitely verify that you're qualified and you have knowledge of what the OSHA guidelines and rules and regulations are. Next certificate I'm going to show you is we call my QSP, Qualified SWIP Practitioner. Most states have this level. California is one of the forerunners in this. And basically what it means is that I am a certified erosion control inspector. It gives me this SWIP extra stamp, the gold stamp on that. And basically it gives me the authority to make changes to on-site construction activities if they are not in compliance with what we call the constructional general permit. Next level training that I have here would be the California Building Officials Training Institute, Fundamentals of Commercial Inspection. Next one is another training certificate from the California Building Code Officials, the Fundamentals of Commercial Plan Check. And that's always a big tip when you can walk into the office of a trailer on site, or even to the general office, and talk to the architects and engineers, and you can read the blueprints. And not just electrical blueprints. I can read the grading prints. So that gives me more knowledge of how things should be done, how things should be set up, and that's why I can offer more of my services with the drone, because I can go off the blueprints and say, well, maybe we should do this a progression instead of a mapping, or go with a mapping over progression. Depends upon what they're building, how it's built, how the terrain's laid out, what's the elevation changes, and all these different things. I can have some input because I'm trained to observe and read the blueprints. And I say, by me being a drone operator, I have that additional knowledge of what the drone can and can't do and what is best at doing. Also, over my shoulder here, this is my current new COA that I just renewed for next year, starting on January 16th of 2022 for my city. Still under the current one that runs out up until that time, but these are things you need to be aware of that you may have to apply for. Now, since I applied for my first one, the city itself, the airport, has gone with lamps, which is great. Didn't have lamps before, now we have it. But when I talked to the FAA, I told them because of my position as classified as a first responder, I need to be able to get up at any time, any place, any hour, which went to a little in-depth conversation what my needs are and how Lance may not be enough for what I do. I need to be able to get up whenever a situation occurs, and they agree because of my position with the city. It also helps me as a regular drone pilot to have that in my back pocket. I will be renewing my other COAs for the city of Riverside, and especially for March Air Force Base, for that area there in the next couple months. So these are things that you may have to encounter in your area that can help you out as being a pilot that has the tools to do a job that other pilots may not be able to. Now, getting back to the COA, is something I learned when I was working with the PD a few months back. If you guys saw that video, I was doing some tow yard work, and we were just discussing some things about flying and everything else. And one of the officers told me that in my area, and you might want to check with yours, that once after dark, the airspace changes. And that's what I tell people, airspace can change. In the daytime, in my area for City of San Bernardino is Class D airspace. But after sunset, it changes to Class G, the entire city. So that's something you might want to look into. Is something that you may not see or find on the initial mapping from the FAA, or especially for the apps before you fly, or Air Map, and several others that are out there that show you airspace and everything else. They may not show you or airspace changes. They'll keep the consistent grid locations there, even airspace that may change. So that was a unique tidbit information, and I verified that with the FAA when I spoke with them about a week ago, that in fact that the airspace in my city after dark changes from Class D to Class G. So this is my little tidbits of information on what you may want to look in your own background, and see where, if you have some things that can be related over to your drone work, that might be your foot in the door to gain more work. I take my hat off to Paul Hodges. He's usually on Canadian Drone show, and Paul Hodges does real estate. And it's not just real estate shooting that he does. Paul does design, setup, and everything else. But Paul will tell you that he has about a handful of agents that keep him busy. And that's why I tell folks that real estate can be tough. And unless you have about a handful of agents that can keep you busy, several times a month. I said, if each agent can provide you at least 2 to 3 listings per month, or at least 2 per month, that'll keep you busy. And like I say, Paul does the extra leg work to set the for sale signs up and everything else. So he's got a good operation. What he's done, he's been doing it for quite a while. So like I say, there's certain things that you have to look into that you might be able to assist at a higher level than just simply fly your drone over and take pictures. So once again, this is Dre Crawford, Recover One Drones. As I always say, fly safe, hang on for the ride, and please subscribe. Thank you.